With this entire project that is putting an LS into my 1988 Honda Accord from the very beginning, I knew that I could get it done. I didn't exactly know how I was going to accomplish each step or the entire project as a whole. So as we were looking at the front subframe, I was just sitting there staring at it. I didn't know what I was going to do. I didn't know how I was going to install it, but I figured it out. Same thing with the trans mount. I didn't know how I was going to do it, but we figured it out. Now we're moving on to the rear subframe, and right now at this point, I don't know yet what I'm going to do.
And now, you're watching the YouTube channel with the absolutely positively biggest fan base on MySpace channel of YouTube. Welcome to Bodie Vision.
So what is up and welcome. Thank you so much for joining me on yet another video. So right after the intro, like you just saw, I just wanted to go into tearing down the Accord because I'm not going to be too focused on that. I more so want to focus on the fact of improving the Accord. I just ripped all the old stuff out. And speaking of old stuff, we got the old Accord subframe right there. The fuel tank had to come out. That's the GTO rear subframe. That's the subframe that we somehow got to figure out how to put into here. So just after looking at it for a second, something's gonna be cut out here because the diff needs to sit about where the floor is sitting right there. I don't know how much I'm gonna cut this way. I don't know how much I'm gonna cut that way. What I do know is that we're gonna figure it out. The rear end's gonna get in there. The rear end's gonna look good. And also, I threw those covers on the motor just to kind of see what they looked like. As you can see right there, looking pretty cool. I think the covers look kind of cool, but I think it looks a little more raw, a little more rugged to not have the cover. So I probably won't be running them, and they look ugly anyways. So what I want to do, take some more measurements, figure out what I gotta cut, and then make that initial cut. And the way that I'm gonna go about doing this is I'm just gonna kind of cut a little bit at a time. I have the subframe on the cart right now, so I'm gonna cut a little bit. I'm gonna roll the cart under there, look for clearance. If I see that the clearance is good, I might lift up the subframe, but either way, we gotta kind of start to get a baseline of where we wanna go and how we wanna get there. So what I'm gonna focus on is getting the subframe about where it needs to live, and then after that, we're gonna focus on actually mounting it. Alrighty, so that just gives us somewhat of an idea of how it's going to eventually sit. And also one other thing that I did, I'm still kind of trying to figure out whether I'm going to do the shock and spring separate or whether I'm going to do it as like a one-piece coilover. That's something I'm kind of trying to figure out. And if you can see right here, I just threw the GTO shock on right there, and then it goes up into, that's the stock place from the Accord, but I don't know if the angles are right. This is just so early on, I haven't been able to determine yet if that's correct. And what I think I'm going to do in the end, in theory, is if you can see that frame rail right there, that frame rail right there, I'm going to run a bar across. It's going to come down a little bit or up. I don't know exactly how high or low the diff has to be. I got to get that figured out. So I'm going to have a bar going across from one side of the frame rail to the other, and then that's going to tie into the diff. And then there's going to be a hole in the floor right there with bracing and brackets, hole in the floor over there with bracing and brackets for this part right here. So we got to focus on tying this to the car, the diff to the car, and then this, but on the other side. So right now what I want to focus on is kind of getting it to the height that I want it to be. And it's so heavy, it's so monstrous right now, so I'm going to go ahead and take the diff off, pull the axles out, just to make it a little bit lighter and easier to work with as I'm working with it. Man, that looks so crazy. Now right now they're not sitting even from left to right, one's poking out a little bit more than the other. And also I knew it was no mystery that the track width on the GTO was wider than the track width on the Accord, and also I'm going with a lower offset wheel than what was on the GTO, so that wider track width is now even wider than it originally was. So it's looking pretty wild. But like I mentioned in my last video, I'm going to eventually build some kind of custom over fenders or something to kind of fill in the gap where it's going to start to come out this way and it'll look good, and then I'm just gonna follow along with the line down there, and we'll get into that a little bit later on. But what I gotta worry about now is I gotta worry about getting the subframe up to the right height, like I was saying a little bit ago. So if you can see right in here, there is no clean and clear answer for me right now, but we gotta figure it out. We figured out a whole bunch of other stuff, so this is not gonna prevent the build from moving on. So I think over here, if you can see this arm right there, that needs to go way up into the car, and that's going to be getting in the way, and this is going to be getting in the way, so I got to cut out some of this stuff out so we can get that to go up higher. What I'm thinking is, if you can see the frame rail right there, and then this is the rail from the subframe, I want to get those to be butted up together because this section doesn't move, and then again this is going to have to be cut out, clearance to give us some room. But if we can get the subframe to come up whatever distance this is right there, I think we'll be in pretty good shape. Hopefully I don't gotta cut out where the rear seats go, but I do know a bunch of that's gonna have to be cut out for the trans tunnel. So all of this through here, the trans tunnel is gonna be as high as this right here and up this high. So in the back, I think we're gonna go from that bench seat in the rear to, I'm probably gonna have to cut out the center section of that back seat and only have 2 little back seats instead of the bench seat, or 3. So the middle seat's gonna be gone, and I'm gonna have to figure out something with fabric. But the seats are the last of my worries. My first concern is making sure that we can get that subframe to mount up in there. And honestly, as I'm filming this, as I'm talking, as I'm looking, I don't know what I'm gonna do. I guess just keep cutting until we get the subframe to go up there. I don't know, we'll see. I don't know. Alright, so the idea is right now those rough hack jobs of a holes, they're all going to be cleaned up, boxed in. We want to make sure they work, and we want to make sure they're nice and strong. We don't want to just get rid of structure and not add at least adamant structure back and then some, because we want to make sure this chassis is extra stiff to handle all the power, especially now since it's rear-wheel drive. This chassis was never meant for any kind of a strain on it like that or anything. So as we're building it, that's going to be in the future. We want to make sure everything's going to work now, and then we're going to go back and re-brace everything, strengthen everything up. And I'm kind of going off on a tangent. So those things that we just hacked out, those are going to be for these right there. This one, that one, and the idea is I'm going to have a metal 2x4 on top of it, just exactly like I did the frame for the front of the Accord section, and I'm going to put a little sleeve inside of it so that way that frame doesn't get crushed as the bolt goes through. And then we're going to have a 1/4 inch plate that the top of that bolt goes through. So I'll get into all of that a little bit later as I'm actually fabricating some of that stuff up. And then again, the diff mount right in the center, right over there, and then we should be pretty good. I don't like how much I had to cut away to make this work, but at this point with this project, the only way to do it is to just do it. We gotta finish it. I can't turn back. This car will end up at the junkyard if it doesn't end up running with an LS, and that will not happen. So I guess I'm gonna try to throw it under there, see if I can get those little arms, the ones that sit in front of the tire, to see if I can get it up a little bit more. What? Okay. Now we definitely don't have a clearance, but at this point I can already see we don't have enough, but I'd rather cut away a little bit and then trim a little bit more rather than cutting off too much, because you can always go a little bit more, you can't do a little bit less. Now obviously, now one thing that's a little bit difficult about the rear end is it's so much bigger than the front end. The front subframe, if you remember 3 or 4 videos back, I was just able to kind of wiggle it in there with the jack, put it where it needed to be, take some measurements, and I had it in and out a whole bunch of different times, and that really worked well for me. But the rear one, for me to be here by myself is really, I just can't handle putting it where it needs to be because it's extremely heavy. So all in all, it's kind of just difficult for me to handle by myself as it's so heavy and I'm here by myself. So my dad, he's been taking some of the weekends off and coming out here and helping me with this. So he's going to be here tomorrow. I actually got some stuff that I got to go run and do right now. So I know unfortunately this video was a little bit shorter and we didn't see as much get done as most of them, but that's just how projects go. You go into them getting a whole bunch of stuff done, then it slows down a little bit, but as long as you keep pushing through, keep getting through it, it will get done eventually. So I guess we made some pretty good progress, got everything out of there. See the subframe where it has to be. Also seeing the rear wheels in the rear wheel well, that was really monumental. I'm excited for that. I'm excited to get the rear end up there, and then we're going to work on the entire drive shaft tunnel, and then the power plant. That's pretty much ready to go, is where everything's going to be mounted. We got to move into different stuff like the steering column, how I'm going to adapt it to work with the steering rack of the GTO, but I still want to use the Accord steering column, so I'm going to have to adapt it. Now I've done that before in the old Ranchero that I had, because I had a Mustang steering column in there. The bottom was a Mustang 2 universal column, so I had to adapt that as well. So I've done that. Also brake lines, fuel lines, plumbing, radiator, all of that is to come, so I hope you're subscribed so that way you can see all of that. I gotta get out of here like I said. So thank you so much for watching. Like this video, comment, subscribe, do all the stuff. You know what it is, YouTube. I will see you on the next one. I'm out!